Hello everyone and welcome back to A Dancer's Mindset with myself, Isabella. Today is a super exciting episode because we're interviewing a fellow Vaganova graduate who's from the UK, Taiga Kodama Pomfret. I'm so excited to chat to him because he's been in the school at the time of Tsiskaridze, where lots of change has been happening, and now he's thriving at the Stanislavski Ballet. Let's get started. So hi Taiga, thank you so much for meeting with me today. I know the listeners are going to be super excited to listen to someone who's graduated from Vaganova recently, because it has changed a lot since I was there. But first of all, before we get to Vaganova, tell me how you started ballet. How did that look like for you?
So my mom has a ballet studio and she teaches students in Oxford of the university mostly. So it's mostly an amateur thing for adults. They can drop in, they can come to classes, and she's been doing it for many years now. So ever since I can remember, I've been around ballet, not necessarily interested in it really, but if my dad was working, she'd have to bring me to the studio with her, and then we'd be there. I'd often, as a child, I was always told how I'd run around with in between the dancers, even in between their legs, which was sometimes an incentive. Even she'd use it to say, "You've got to lift your arabesque and keep your leg high," so not so they don't kick me as I'm running around the studio. So for that, I was always around ballet. I was always around the studio. So I never really needed any kind of introduction to it. It was just something that I grew up around and I've always been used to. And I think it must have been in 2014, my mum asked me if I wanted to take part in one of the shows. It wasn't anything dancing, it was more just a bit of acting, run around, be a cute child in the performance. So I'd have something to do rather than just sit around during rehearsals and classes without doing anything. So my mum was doing a version of Coppelia. So I was just one of these little boys running around the town. So I remember I had to steal the key from Dr. Coppelius. There was a lot of definitely already acting and properly performing as well, rather than just running around smiling. I had to be a cheeky boy. And I definitely enjoyed it. So then after that, my mum said to me that, if I'd like to continue performing, then I'd have to start doing classes. Up until then, I'd only really just gone and done rehearsals and run around a bit. So then she said, if you want to do more shows, then you have to start learning ballet, which I did. And for me, then it wasn't really anything interesting to start with. Is kind of, standing at the bar, all this.
Super
Yeah,
slow.
I was already used to running around, having fun and feeling free on stage. And then there's all of a sudden this discipline of actually having to do something. And I didn't find it very interesting at all. But that's how
By this point, were you at Elmhurst already at this point?
I was still learning with my mum up until 2018. But the thing that actually got me enjoying ballet and really inspired me was in 2016 when the Bolshoi came to London. She took me to some performances. I mean, at this point, I think my mum had already tried showing me some videos online, so I was aware of obviously what an amazing theatre it is. So they came to London. We watched Swan Lake, and the moment I remember is the jesters turned in the first act. I was literally started leaning forward in my seat. We were up in the auditorium high up, but I just remember looking down and thinking, wow, it was such an inspiring moment. And just to see what is possible, I hadn't necessarily been quite so, I hadn't quite experienced the emotions of it. And obviously, watching it live is so different to seeing things through a screen. So then that really inspired me to start dancing. And then from that moment, especially, I was just constantly trying pirouettes, spinning in the studio, and it would quite annoy people in the studio sometimes.
Would you say that was quite a big moment for you in terms of starting to get introduced to Russian ballet and how good it is?
Yes, I mean, just everything about it was so inspiring, just to see not just the dancing, but the way they show emotions. It's just the artistry of it as well. I found it really pulls you in. It's really just an amazing sensation to sit there and watch this kind of performance live.
Would you say, I mean, I completely agree. Whilst you were at Elmhurst, and obviously not Russian training at all, um, were you still keenly and heavily interested in Russian training? And how did you feel? How was your experience at Elmhurst training? And did you ever feel like there's something missing for you here? You know?
I wouldn't say there was anything missing. I had a great experience there, but I think
Mm.
since I was since that performance for me, it was Russian ballet for me was the only way to go forward. So it was always my goal to get there. But I mean, I struggled even to get into Elmhurst at first. I didn't get there until year nine after the third time auditioning. Obviously, my physical attributes aren't great. I have short legs, bad feet, and so it took a while to get to work on that. When I first auditioned for Elmhurst, it was before we actually went to watch the Bolshoi, so I still wasn't interested so much. So I think that was probably also quite visible. I wasn't really necessarily wanting to, but my mum said it was a good idea to go just in case. But when I got to Elmhurst, it was very different for me because it was the first time going to a proper ballet school. The routine, normally it'd be doing classes in the evening after normal school, and I'd get back quite late. So then it was very different to have classes every single day at the same kind of time, but also mixed in with academics, which in a way was harder.
Mm.
You know, you're sitting in maths and then you go straight to a ballet class, but I really enjoyed it. But I was still always thinking, you know, obviously I have my goals that I'm always wanting to achieve. So I never lost sight of that. You know, at the end of the day, I'd always go to the studio. I'd just jump loads of variations still. I was always watching as many videos as I could find. I'd always be searching after know there's a performance that's going on. I'd even look at the websites of the theatres to see who's dancing what, and I tried to find videos of that. So I was always very actively looking and trying to get as much inspiration as
Mm.
I could whenever possible.
Yeah, I mean that's amazing. And I'm curious to know whether your activities of practicing at the end of the day and watching all these, I assume, Russian ballet dancers, whether you had influence on your classmates and whether they questioned who you're watching, like, oh, why are you so interested in these dancers? Why are you practicing so much? You know, did you sort of influence them to do similar at all? Were they interested?
Um, I wouldn't say necessarily a huge amount, but I'd say, do you want to come to the studio? I do remember when I was in year nine, I think it must have been my first year still, there was a boy from year seven who was definitely inspired by how I'd just go to the studio where we'd do variations, so he'd come along. So there was definitely one or two, mostly younger people. I think in my year, not quite so much. They would just be more settled to do their own things at the end of the day. But I was always,
Mm.
yeah, there were a couple, mostly younger people who'd sometimes find some influence, I think, in it and try to dance more variations, and we'd have some good conversations about different dances and styles.
Yeah. And another question I had, because obviously you mentioned being rejected 3 times or twice, getting in the third time, to Elmhurst. How did you? Because obviously that's quite tough to deal with, especially when you're quite young. How did you cope with that? Were you in any way doubtful of your abilities, or was it the fact that you had your goals so fixed in your mind that you knew that at some point you would get what you wanted?
Well, of course, I mean, when I was younger, especially back then, if I look back at the videos and I think, how did I even get to this point now? How have I even got a job? I mean, the first year when I was auditioning for year seven, I wasn't so interested, so it wasn't too much. It didn't affect me too much. And then when I auditioned for year eight, I got to the final audition but didn't get a place, which was a bit more upsetting. But then my mum was, she was reassuring me, saying it's most likely just because they haven't got a place for you. Because I'd gone to the
Mm.
summer school in 2016 and I did actually impress the artistic director, Robert Parker. So my mum was convinced, and she was reassuring me. She was saying it's quite likely there's just no places, and just I'm sure that next year is quite likely. So I was never, I don't remember any huge feelings of feeling really down or that I wasn't doing well enough. I just kept going, and yeah, it wasn't anything that affected me too much.
Yeah, well, that's good. I think that's a really good head on your shoulders you've got, because I think that would already destroy some people, you know. So I think that's a good setup for moving to Russia. Let's talk about that, how that came about in the first place, because obviously you have this dream of going to Vaganova, and I also had those dreams, when I was younger, but actually making that a reality and actually being there and getting into the Vaganova is a whole different story. And from my point of view, I had some connections to help me get in. How was your approach?
For me, it was surprisingly simple. I mean, I got to year 11 looking for places to go for upper school training to go further, and I just so I looked on the website for Vaganova. They've got the international trainees program, and all it says is you just send in a video. So I just, along with all the other audition videos, I mean, I think I didn't manage to film. I had to film a separate one because I'd filmed certain ones to send to other schools, but then there was a lockdown. So then after that, I had to come back and try film a whole new audition video, which in the end I managed to do. I just sent it there, and just a couple of days later, they replied saying they'll offer me a place.
That's great. I wish every school was like within 2 days.
Yeah,
I feel like they're very like this, no bones about it. We like this person. Come now, come tomorrow. That's amazing. How did you feel?
I remember the moment I got the email. I think I was stressing about it a lot, but it was just in the half term, so we'd gone up to see our grandparents. It was sometime in May, early June, I think. It was, nice and sunny. The weather was good, so my mum was sat in the garden. I saw the email. I didn't open it, but I ran to my mum in the garden. I opened it, and then I read that I'd been accepted, and I went crazy. I screamed, and I ran around the garden just out of pure excitement. It was amazing. It was such a good feeling.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, I'm living vicariously through you. So now you've received the letter and you're going to Vaganova. Um, Tell me about your first impressions of the Vaganova. And in this instance, Nikolai Tsiskaridze was already the director there, right? So again, I'm really interested in this because it would be an entirely different experience. Tell me how you felt in the first few days taking classes there.
It was honestly terrifying. I mean, I really didn't know much Russian at all. I tried to learn a little bit, but once I got there, I found that everything I'd learned, I apparently just didn't know. Couldn't understand anything. It was all a lot faster than I was aware of, than I expected, and just even the idea of being at Vaganov was so scary. So that everything I just really struggled to understand. The very first day we had a control class, and Jana Upova came to watch. So she then put us into different classes. I was 16, so I was kind of expecting to be put in the first course, and then they came back and said, I'm going to be put in the second course, which is, so there's only 2 years left of training. And I just remember thinking, oh my, I have to find a job next year. And that was my first thought, to be honest. I thought I'd have 3 years and it'd be a bit more calm. But having 2 years suddenly felt a lot scarier. And then the day after that, I went to my first class with my teacher, Alexei Ilin. And he comes in, he goes, who are you? And I go, my eyes just open so wide, I just go, Taiga. And he just goes, stand there at the bar, on the side bar. And I go, okay. And then he's explaining combinations and giving the class. Oh no, because they'd already had one day, it was straight into the combinations without me being able to learn anything. I was told to just watch and try pick up as they did the combinations. So it was
Almost impossible.
yeah. And then he'd
Yeah.
shout some things to me. I didn't really understand much, but he would speak in English. His English isn't bad, so obviously I'm able to. He would give me corrections in English, and he'd say things to me in English. I was very, very shocked, mostly at how much turnout they expect from you.
Yeah, I
Legs
know.
properly to the side, just 180 degrees. In England we're taught, don't do more than your body allows, so you keep things in alignment so you don't break anything or injure yourself. But here it's just heel forward. You literally comes and like grabs you, pulls your legs to the side.
So how did you cope with that? Because I know when that first happened to me, I was expecting it. But I was also like, oh gosh, I just found it really tough to hold those positions. And that in itself took huge effort to just suddenly, no progression from 0 to 100, suddenly flat turnout. But, surprisingly get used to it quite quick.
Well, it's kind of you get used to trying. For me, because of the way my legs are, I've always struggled. I still struggle. I can't, at the bar, like I haven't got perfect turnout. My feet are still, there's still so much to work on. But it's definitely just the whole way of trying to suddenly change your alignment to get things so it's perfectly to the side. So you pushing yourself even more than you ever expected. It's definitely hard. I think maybe the tiniest bit has improved over 2 years. I remember my teacher was saying, maybe in 2 years it will get better. Just keep working, keep working. But yeah, it was definitely a shock when I first came, and then to try keep working on that every day is quite hard.
Yeah, I mean, watching your videos, because I've seen your exam videos and everything, and I personally think you obviously improved like an insane amount. Like watching, I scrolled down a little bit your Instagram and looking at your practice videos at Elmhurst compared to then just 2 years later, your manège, your jeté manège around and your pas de deux skills, really fantastic. Were you still also practicing a lot at night in those 2 years?
I must say, no, not really. It's a lot more intense, the training there. So the
Yeah.
class already after the first week of classes, I was dead. I did struggle a bit at first. It was all completely different. I found it quite hard. I did struggle, and just the intensity of it was a lot more. I was having a great time, but I just thought I always thought, okay, next week I'm going to go to the studio, do things. Maybe the week after, but it never really ended up happening somehow. There were a couple of times I'd go
Yeah.
a bit, but it was never that much, to be honest.
I'll be honest, it took me maybe 2 years until I started to go to the studio, because I think it took me two years to get used to the complete routine. When did you start to see huge improvement in your dancing, and when did you start to think, oh, I'm actually starting to dance like a Russian dancer now? Like I feel more accustomed to what they expect of me.
Well, I mean, my mum's style of teaching is Russian because she was taught by dancers who also trained in Russia, so it wasn't something completely new to me. There were some things that were a bit different, but I'd say so. It didn't take a huge amount of time for me. I feel to get used to the style of dancing necessarily. I think maybe within half a year I felt more comfortable, but I definitely didn't feel like my dancing had improved a lot until I went to the competition last summer.
Yeah, tell me more about this.
So it was quite unexpected. What happened was we had our classical exam, and I remember before one of the combinations, we come out from the back of the Petit Pas studio, and we're standing there, and Tsiskaridze's there talking to my teacher, Ian. He just stood up in the middle of the exam, was talking to him. So we just stood there at the back waiting, and he goes back, sits down, and the combination starts. We were all just thinking, what's that about? And after the exam, the teacher comes, gives us our marks, and he goes to me, oh, by the way, you're going to the Moscow competition. And I think, wow. It had always been a dream of mine, even since I was in England. I remember watching the 2017 Moscow International Competition,
Mm.
and I was thinking, I want to go to that. Because dancing in the Bolshoi, of course, is such a huge dream to be able to dance in such an amazing theatre.
Mm.
So, yeah, I was thinking, this is a great opportunity.
How did that feel? How did that feel when, the day came and it was about to happen, you're about to perform on the Bolshoi stage?
I must say I wasn't necessarily so stressed about. I wasn't really worried. I wasn't so nervous necessarily. I was just more focused on doing the best I could do to make sure I could dance well and perform well rather than thinking, oh gosh, I'm at the competition, I'm to be stressed. I thought I'm just going to give it my
Mm.
all, perform properly. I think that was one of the main things I was trying to focus on, is to actually perform, show artistry rather than, it's one thing to do things well, clean, but I don't have the advantage of that. So I need to also really go over and beyond with my artistry to really capture the audience and, of course, the judges.
Yeah. I mean, that comes across. I watched your performance as well. I think as well because, I'm super tall, as a female dancer. So in a way, we're at different ends of the spectrum, right? Because I'm also above average, so it's kind of, I have my own difficulties, and so I had to stand out in a different way. Like, I had to be very good in order to be put at the front, because otherwise, if you're really tall and not great, there's just kind of no hope. But because you're smaller, right? You you kind of, but you don't dance like that, you know what I mean? You dance very large, and so that really comes across. Like, when you're talking about artistry, you remind me a bit of someone like Ivan Vasiliev or something, like really sort of taking up the stage and exuding a lot of character, um which, yeah, I think is fabulous. But watching you, I think to myself, I don't think had you not gone to Vaganova and been really pushed and really pushed your limit really in those critical last 2 years, I can't see that would have happened should you have stayed here to that degree. Like, you being able to like eat up that Bolshoi stage with so much character. I mean, do you agree that like it was probably the best decision?
Yeah, definitely. I really don't think it could have gone any better, to be honest. I mean, to get such opportunities, to be able to dance performances in the Mariinsky and the Bolshoi in Kremlin, is such an amazing experience. The amount they make you perform, it just gives you so much experience, not only just in class, but on stage as well. It really prepares you already straight away for the life in the theatre. Whereas I feel if I'm just in the studio all the time without going on stage, you can always improve, but there's certain aspects you only learn on stage.
Yeah, I mean, there's talking with you just, briefly now, there's an element about you that it's like you've had your goals extremely clear in your head for a long time, and you've just been quietly chipping away at them. And then they've just sort of, you say, they've landed on your lap or they've just sort of happened. But I actually think you've heavily been on your way to these things for a long time. Would you agree?
I, in a way, yes. In a way, I'd say I'm definitely very lucky as well. But definitely, I think if I hadn't worked as much, then it would have been very different. I think one aspect of what helped me get to where I am today in terms of my dancing is also the fact that I'd not just go to the studio, but I'd always get things filmed. So then I could always watch my dancing back. And at the start, I mean, I've seen you talk about it as well. You know how horrible it can be to watch your own dancing, but
Yeah.
eventually it didn't get quite so bad. But then you can see these things of how to improve, what to improve on, and then I'd always be looking at other dancers as well. I'd look at, other dancers, look at myself, see where certain aspects come from, just even the smallest hand gestures, where the head might go, just in these certain places. I'd look at something of me doing it and think that doesn't look right, and then I go look at someone else who's like professionals who've done it for years, and it really does make a difference to watch yourself and really study it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure. And then, you end up watching yourself less sort of critically once you get used to it, and just kind of rationally, like, oh, that needs fixing, this needs fixing. I need to do more with my head here, this kind of thing. Now, I've never asked someone this before because really there hasn't been anyone to ask before, other than, people ask me this all the time, but I'm interested to hear what your answer is. What would you say the biggest difference that you've experienced from English training to Russian training, if you could pinpoint it?
I think the level of directness, they're a lot more direct. I think it's just the way of saying things is in England, there was often more, this is good, you can do this better. And when I came, it's just straight away, this is bad, you do it like this. And even in at Vaganova, some teachers were different, but definitely Tsiskaridze, he was very straightforward. He'd tell you one time, if you don't do it, then it's already, you know, it will, it's can get scary, but it's definitely good to be pushed in such a way so you're not necessarily always being told, yeah, this is good, you could do this a bit better, possibly. It's just you have to be told sometimes that some things are just bad.
Yeah. To be honest, I loved that level of directness. Like, it was something that really I thrived on because it just feels so honest and real, and like they're not tiptoeing around any kind of points. It's like, that's terrible, do it better, full stop. you know but you get results and you improve quick because they're basically like, you come back tomorrow with that turnout, good luck, kind of thing.
Obviously, with such directness, when you're being told something's bad all the time, or you have to do this better, just like, if when something's so direct, it feels even better when you're told, well done, that's good. So in
Absolutely.
a way, it's so much more rewarding as well.
Now, I've heard things about Tsiskaridze through the grapevine. I've heard he's a fabulous teacher, but somewhat a little bit scary, maybe a little bit crazy. Tell me, tell me a bit more about Tsiskaridze's role as director and what you make of him as director and teacher, if you've experienced him as a teacher.
I was very lucky to be able to rehearse with him for the competition and for the graduation performances. So it's good. Yeah, obviously it's scary. He was a principal at the Bolshoi. He's now director. He's the most important person there. And he's definitely not crazy. He's very demanding. He expects you to do things from the first time that he tells you. But I must say I was very lucky because I never actually got shouted at by him. I
Mm.
think one thing I remember him saying is he likes how I'll do something the first time after I've been asked to do it, and he mentioned Aaron as well, who was also at Vaganova. He's mentioned him as well, saying, I think it did help that Aaron came before me because in some ways there are similarities, and he does like both of us. But no, he's very demanding. He's very inspiring. You can really see in all the corrections the reasoning behind it, where it comes from all the experience, and it does make sense. It's all, I think, is wonderful, really.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard he's a fabulous teacher, and to be honest, my teacher as well was super demanding, and ended up working closely with him, I think, for a while. I think that level of demand, though, creates, as long as you don't crumble as a person, you have to be quite a strong person, I think, to deal with that kind of critique. Um, but I think if you're in Vaganova, like, you're of that persona, like, you can handle it. And it does create the most amazing results that in other countries, it just, we don't get necessarily. I found when I was in Russia, and since you're still in Russia, I assume you feel the same. Once you're in Russia and you train with such amazing teachers, and your eyes are opened to the amount of detail, and sort of you think about your movement and your expression in such a different way, that you realize how great Russian ballet is. I found it almost very difficult to think about leaving and think about going somewhere else. And when it came the time of auditioning for companies for you, did you even think about anywhere else, or was your heart set on, I mean, Mariinsky, Bolshoi? What was your experience when it was time to graduate?
So yeah, I didn't really think of anything else by the time it got to exams. I was just really like thinking I only want to be here. So I never reached out to anywhere else. And what's lucky about being at Vaganova is all the directors come to you. You don't have to reach out; they come to you to invite you to places. So, we had the one of the leading coaches, the main coaches from Yekaterinburg. They came in to watch a class once, and they invited a couple of us from our class to the theatre straight after just watching the class. And they also came up to the exam as well. And Maxime Sivagan also came to the exam, who's now, the artistic director here at Stanislavski, and he invited me after the exam. So you do get invitations straight away after the exams, and then some companies like Marinsky, you'll be then invited to an audition to go audition there. So it's definitely less stressful in terms of reaching out. You can get invited to theatres, and it's definitely I'd say less stressful in the fact that you only have to really worry after the exams, and then you just go to the auditions that they invite you on, or even if you've been invited straight to a theatre.
What was your experience with those companies? Because obviously you've ended up in Moscow, but did you ever think about Marinsky as a contender?
Definitely yes, but I mean I didn't actually get invited, so it wasn't obviously at that point a possibility. I was quite aware that was an unlikely thing. It was definitely a stretch.
Why do you think you didn't get invited?
I think mostly things to do with height and physique.
Well, they're missing out. Okay, so then you've ended up in Moscow, Stanislavski, right? How are you enjoying it?
It's wonderful. So far I've had a good half a season. I mean, I've had good opportunities to start with. It was a bit slow. I was thinking, obviously, I had to wait to get my work permit after I came, so then I couldn't sign my contract for a whole month. But then at the end of October, I had my debut as the gypsy from Don Quixote in the Raves version. Before that, I had a couple of corps de ballet things to do. It was a bit harder. The very first time I went on stage as a professional ballet dancer, all I had to do was stand outside Giselle's house in first act. And I was thinking, it's not the best way to be starting my career, but it picked up quite quickly. We were involved in modern, which was something I'd had very little experience in. What actually happened was I was told to go to these rehearsals for a one act ballet, which was part of a triple bill. So I learnt this piece. I had a few rehearsals, and then all of a sudden I was told the day before a stage run that because one of the guys is off doing he's on tour or something, I have to stand in and do the stage run. And that was definitely a very stressful moment because then also Maxime Suvagin was there watching, and I was there first time really properly trying to do modern. But I think things did pick up in November. We had Snow Queen, which was a new ballet done by Sivagin. It was very interesting to work on. We also had -16 by Ohad Nahari. And for me, that was a very interesting thing. It was something completely different to what I'd ever done. So it was for me, very demanding, very challenging. But I really enjoyed it, especially doing the actual performance. It was amazing. And I think then it really felt a lot better when I got to Nutcracker and I got given a lot to dance there. So it was definitely, I'm very grateful for the fact I've been given so much to dance. I got to really properly go out on stage and perform, and that's definitely been the highlight of the season so far.
That's great though, because I always feel like when people come fresh out of school and then they have to stand outside someone's door, it's kind of a bit of a low point. And a lot of people, I think, crumble at that point in the sense that, especially if they've done really well in school and been given some great opportunities, it can feel really demotivating to then feel like, oh, is this my career? Is this where it's going to stay? And I think in this day and age, especially, people are super impatient and not used to kind of not getting instant results, especially with the whole social media thing. Everything's instant these days. And you say it happened quite quickly, but in those moments, did you sort of give yourself any kind of sort of a talking to or kind of reassurance where you were like, no, I got to bide my time. This is what I've got to do. Everything's going to be fine. Did you ever doubt your choices or what would happen in your career?
There was definitely worries. I was thinking, what's going to happen. I was seeing my classmates already dancing solo stroll straight away. I was talking with my parents. My mum was very supportive, saying, you have to wait. It's really unlikely that you can just go into the theatre and dance solo thing straight away. But so that period when I was in that time, like in that situation, it felt like it was going on forever. And I just, I think it was just over a month, really, a month and a half maybe, up until the end of October when I danced the Gypsy, which I did find out fairly quickly. They put the casts up in the middle of September or something, maybe even the start. But it's just the idea of having to wait so long to get there just felt like I wasn't doing anything, I wasn't doing enough. It was definitely quite a low point, but things did pick up quickly. And I remember at one point, Maxim Svagin came up to me and goes, "One of the coaches wants to work with you." And that was probably the perfect moment. I was feeling awful at that point. I was thinking, I'm not enough. Am I going to make it anywhere? Can I even do it? But then that was really a good moment. I got to work on some roles with her, like Spanish with Spanish, Russian, Chinese for the Nutcracker. And it was definitely very good to be able to work. And no, I'm loving my time here now. It's amazing.
That's what I really love about the Russian companies is they just kind of do stuff when they want. Like they're less sort of rule abiding in the sense that, it does happen that someone comes straight out of school and they go straight to soloist at Bolshoi or something. It's just like, we like them, this is happening. But also, like, this would never happen, for example, in an English company where a coach is just walking by and it's like, oh, I want to work with you. Let's run some variations or something, but it's great that they do that, because it's like they really know how to nurture the young, and because I assume you felt quite demotivated at that point and not with the uncertainty of what was going to happen, but then just knowing that someone's actually interested in you and wants to help and nurture you instantly reignites that passion. You probably know my friend who's a principal there, Ksenia Shevtsova.
Yes.
Yeah. You must say hello. How is your Russian, Taiga?
I'd say I can get by with it. I can have conversations. I understand. I mean, definitely understanding things in rehearsals, there's not really any problems. I understand everything that's being said to me. But it did take a while. Obviously, when I came, I barely spoke any. By Nutcracker, I was starting. I remember we had Nutcrackers in the academy in my first year. I was starting to very slowly have broken conversation with people. And then by the end of the first year at Vaganova and going into the second, I was already able to talk a lot more comfortably and be able to get my views across and, just be able to communicate. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's terrible. I can talk with people, I can communicate. So it's,
Yeah. I always would say to people, look, if someone came up to me and tried to talk about politics, I probably wouldn't do so well. But if they want to just talk about what's on the schedule, that's fine. But yeah, you'll probably end up sort of similar to how I was, where it's like a fluent conversation, but sort of not. Well, for me, there's no way I could just talk about like science or politics or be that fluent, to that next level. But we get by. We get by. So, do you see yourself staying in Russia for the long term, for the long haul? Would you ever imagine yourself going somewhere else in your career?
Well, I haven't necessarily thought about it quite that far ahead in the terms of for the foreseeable future. I want to be working here. For me, this is the best style of ballet, not just in terms of technique, but also in the artistry, the way it's a proper performance is. Because here ballet is an art form. It's really seen as art. So I'm really comfortable here. I love the work. I love the whole theatre life. I love everything that there is about ballet in Russia. So for now, I'm definitely wanting to see how far I can get while I'm here, and then potentially see what happens down the road.
I mean, it's really interesting to me that you mention and say that ballet here is seen as an art form. Like it's not seen as an art form somewhere else. But I think, I mean, you're right to a certain degree. It's kind of to that level of art. You just don't get that anywhere else. And I really feel so, and I know you do as well, like so lucky to have experienced that kind of training, because now, and I'm sure you get it when you watch other companies now or other performances from other places where they've trained differently, while you appreciate it, you can also see, and I watch, obviously I'm coaching now, so it's like I can see how much more potential there is for whatever it is they're doing that they're not doing, because of the fact that they haven't exactly been exposed to that level of art and that level of detail that we have, which again makes it so special, because not everyone can see the potential that something can have. Like I was watching the Spanish dance from Swan Lake, and it was like a video with all different versions, like Royal Ballet, Paris Opera, Bolshoi, and you can see the difference, and Mariinsky, and you can see, the huge difference in terms of the upper body and the shoulders. And so for me, that's what makes the experience so special, because you're right, the level of art is next level,
There's just so much attention to detail with every single part, right down to the tips of the fingers. Just everything. It has to be properly. Also, just really focused on exactly how everything is for each character. How certain characters you have different nuances, and yeah, I mean it's definitely they're really focused on every little detail.
Yeah. I'm interested to know who are your role models? Who do you look up to? Which dancers do you admire?
So I mean, I one of my biggest role models is Igor Tsirko, principal in Bolshoi. He's been very supportive of me through Instagram, and I've been lucky enough to meet him a few times. He's very supportive, and I really love his style of dance, the way he dances. I find he's one of the people I've watched the most. I get a lot of my inspiration from his dance. I get lots of inspiration from his dancing. And many of the principals in Bolshoi, I love. I mean, because that's who I watched and what really inspired me to start with. It's what I'm always trying to take from to really try implement that in my dance wherever I can.
Tiger, what would you say at this point in your career, which is still super fresh and new? What are your biggest goals? I'd say, what are your goals coming up at the moment? And what would you say, if you have them, if you think that far ahead, what are your sort of biggest aspirations?
Obviously, I think as many people have, I want to make it as far up as I can. I want to really push myself, mostly just at the moment trying to take it step by step, not necessarily look too far into the future because then any certain setback might have a huge impact. And I want to try to think as positively as possible. I'm thinking about how lucky I am to be in the situation I am in now and to keep that going as much as I can. I'm in a good situation. Still got good things to be dancing coming up. I've got work to do. so yeah. I'm mostly just trying to take it a step at a time and just improve as much as I can day by day.
You seem like, honestly, you've got an amazing head on your shoulders. Like, like I get so many messages from people who are thinking, so far ahead and so worried about everything and every little setback. And you seem so chill and so calm, taking it day by day and just trying to improve, like literally how everyone should behave, just trying to get better each day. So I think your mum really did a good job. Like, she sounds like a good mum.
She is definitely. She's amazing. She's taught me a lot about. She did help me with what to expect as well. She pushed me a lot as well. Even when I was young, I'd she'd often get quite annoyed at me when I wasn't working properly. If she felt I wasn't taking anything seriously enough, she always wanted me to properly work rather than just play around. She tried to make me also work on the basics, how, using my muscles, using my legs properly rather than just jumping around the studio, which definitely did help a lot. It helped me be more grounded and see where I am and get a better idea of what to achieve and in what kind of time frame, if that makes sense, rather than just expecting
Mm.
everything straight away. Even to this day, she's still constantly reminding me, I have to be patient. I can't just expect everything straight away. It's not going to come to you just like that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed you were able to work with your mum that closely. I mean, obviously ballet's in her blood. Um, but for me, if my mum ever tried to get involved, I was like, please leave. Like, you're not allowed to watch. But that's super impressive because, I think for a lot of people, they'd find that almost pressurizing, like quite difficult to deal with. But again, you seem like you had a good relationship and you were just happy to listen to her advice. I mean, looking back again, what was that like training with your mom? Did you ever like butt heads because she's your mom?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, it happened. There have been many cases like that, and it's been difficult at many times. But we have always been able to somehow, get through it, find an understanding with each other. That when we're in the studio, she's my teacher, and then outside of the studio, she's my mum. So it's trying to kind of keep the separation between her being a teacher and my mum, rather than just my mum who's trying to tell me what to do, which it definitely helped, I think, to really find the difference.
Yeah. Well, I think again, like she's really obviously helped you train initially with the ballet, but just mentally, I think everyone needs to pay attention to Tiger's mental strategy because he's taking day by day and he's quite laid back. Would you say you're quite sort of calmly determined?
I'm not sure you could say calmly. I am determined.
You're calm today.
Calm today. Yes. I've got a day off, so it's relaxing.
Oh, okay, we're calm.
Yeah. No, but I don't. I always try to push myself, but not so much, that I do something stupid and I hurt myself, because then that's just going to have a reverse effect, obviously. So I'm trying to keep within the limits, but push myself as much as possible and just do as much as I can in, well, just do as much as I can
Mm.
within limits.
Yes, because when you're not in school anymore, obviously a lot of it, obviously you have the coaches and things, but a lot of it is up to you, pushing yourself. But you seem very self-motivated as well.
It's not necessarily all the time. Some days, it'll be after bar, you just want to stop, and obviously in the theatre you can. But then, there's many times I think I can't, my legs hurt, I'm tired or something, but I just say I need to, push myself to the end of class, especially if there's fewer rehearsals, then I try and make up for that by doing more in class. During Nutcracker, it's more of a marathon, so you're trying to just pace yourself and not, you don't necessarily try to do everything in class. So I came back to class just yesterday, or the day before yesterday, and I was still kind of in that mindset I was used to already for a couple of weeks, only really doing bar and then a bit of censor before going to the performances. But now I'm already having to really push myself again. Also, just coming from a small break, it's got used to relaxing, so I'm just trying to make sure I really get in shape as fast as possible and really keep the momentum going.
Amazing. Well, listen, it sounds like everything's going swimmingly. Everything's going well for you, and it's just amazing how your life can turn around in 2 years. And so much can happen, so much can change, you can grow so much, and it's kind of crazy the amount you've improved in just 2 years. I mean, just from those small clips I've seen of you, it's insane how much you improved. Seriously, like, really incredible. You should be super, super proud of yourself. And I think it's just the beginning, because if you can improve that much in 2 years, just look at you in 5. Like, it's going to be fantastic. So I look forward to following your progress and following how everything's going. And again, you seem like you've got a really good head on your shoulders and you're doing the right stuff. So congrats on everything so far. You're welcome. And thanks for talking to us today. I'm sure everyone will be keen to hear once again what it's like at Vaganova. And it sounds like it's as torturous as ever. Which I miss. I miss being told, no, that's bad. It was a highlight. But thank you so much, Taiga. And hopefully we'll have you on again in a few years' time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Oh, an amazing chat with Taiga. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to this episode. Really great to hear the experience of someone who's also graduated from the Vaganova Ballet Academy at a different time with different directors. And as you can see, Taiga has achieved his goals despite only being there a couple of years, sheer determination, with his eye on the prize, so to speak, and having an amazing experience there, which is wonderful for me to hear as well. And what I really enjoyed about Taiga is he's got a wonderful head on his shoulders, really taking day by day, not getting too stressed out and just trying to be better each day. And that's really something we can carry through with anything we're trying to achieve. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Go out there and grab your dreams, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye for now.